welcome everyone to the PYRESWAP show. And today's Thankful Thursday. And you know, today is a day, by the way, that I fully intend to make this extremely high-value day for you guys in the audience today. And thank you again to everybody who's attending on Twitter or Kick or Twitch. Now, first of all, today's Thankful Thursday, and for everybody in attendance, I want to say, thank you again for persistence, right? And thank you again for patience. And thank you again for the belief in something bigger than I guess what we see in Web3 today, right? I really do thank you for this. Like, I mean it from the bottom of my heart, because your belief in it helps my belief in it, if that makes sense. Now, what I'm really thankful for as well is books. Now, this book right here is called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. You can see that. I just got done reading this book today. Not that long. It's like 130 pages or something like that. I was actually going to go over these 22 laws with you and actually talk about what we're doing correctly and what we're doing incorrectly. And a lot of good news is that we're actually doing the right thing on a lot of these things. We're doing the right thing on a lot of these things. And my understanding of a few of this stuff was already pretty good. It's now been sharpened even more. I have a whole other marketing book that I'm getting to later. But the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is we actually took the TVB metric off of the landing page because I felt that it was confusing to have it there with 3 question marks. Does that make sense to you guys? Hope that makes sense. Okay, fantastic. I'm glad it makes sense to you guys. Yeah, quiet day here on Thursdays, but sometimes they are. Anyways, we have this new thing coming for the landing page, and I can show it to you guys. If I can get a brief screen share, Mr. Producer. So right here on the landing page, you see "Welcome to PYRESWAP, a decentralized exchange in the center of circus hegemony." That subtitle there doesn't mean anything. However, we're going to keep it there regardless. What we're going to do is we're going to add another line of text. It's probably going to be below here. It's going to be longer, and it's going to extend more towards the middle of the page, as it were. And this is going to be this sentence that effectively addresses what's in it for the user. Does that make sense? And there's a whole bunch of things that we can actually talk about. Believe it or not, this particular sentence actually has a common beginning, but then it rotates through a few different endings. So the first part is that it says it's the mega dApp that lets you monetize your wallet transaction history. Then it goes to the mega dApp that gives you the same powers as central bankers. The mega dApp that makes you a member in the world's first decentralized credit union. The mega dApp that builds your credit score while you play games. Let me keep reading this. The mega dApp that gives you the consistently highest real yields in DeFi. The mega dApp that makes you an early adopter to the newest DeFi inventions. The mega dApp that teaches you where the money comes from. The mega dApp that helps you believe in something bigger than yourself. The mega dApp that encourages you to use teamwork to make money. And the mega dApp that shows you the potential of GameFi and DeFi. Does that make sense to you guys? Does that make sense? Did you guys understand what I said? And it's going to rotate the second part of that sentence, right? We're going to have a little CSS animation, and you're basically going to see that this is first of all, we're focusing on a word, right, which is the mega dApp concept, but then we basically just go through, I guess that was 7, 8, or 9 different value props for the target user. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay, anyways, yes, so this is going to get implemented soon, and it's just one of many marketing things, these marketing enhancements we have coming, just to be clear. Now, additionally, if you guys don't have any questions about that, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about these 22 immutable laws. So, yeah, Mr. Brewster, you can put me back on the main, and I'm going to erase this because I'm assuming there are no questions about it. I want to talk about something as well, and this is important about why we're building leaderboards in the first place. There's a proverb. It goes like this. It is better to see it once than to hear about it. Oh, wow. I got that wrong. it is better to see it once than to hear about it 1,000 times. And this right here is in fact a quote that's from this book, but it's actually a proverb that apparently either comes from Asia or it comes from, I don't know, the 1980s. And the point being here is that while you guys have heard a lot about the benefits PYRESWAP offers, like the more that can be demonstrated, at least in the most superficial sense, it's better to see that once than to hear about it 1,000 times, right? Like the imagination is useful, but it's better, sight is just easier. So like wherever you can make things easier is better. So these are 22 laws, they're mutable. And the first one here is the law of leadership. It is better to be first than it is to be better. It is better to be first than it is to be better. And what this means is when marketing is a game of perceptions. Marketing is a game of perceptions. So the fact of the matter is that lots of people, how do I describe it? Once you're the first to do something, everyone associates your name with being the first to do it. Once you're the second to do something, like, it just isn't, right? Yeah, like, it's hard for you to mention, like, it's way harder to remember the name of, like, the second company, the second person to do something. Does that make sense? Like, as a history? Therefore, like, being early is the best advantage, right? Being better is not. And, you can see that with meme coins even, if that makes sense. And you can see it with Bitcoin as well, right? Does that make sense? Like every single project that's been built, every chain that's been built since Bitcoin, in theory, has been proved that it's been better as far as the chain goes. It's better than Bitcoin, but nobody cares because Bitcoin's first, right? Hope that makes sense. And now you can make up for it. With other laws. And this one is the law of category. And basically what it means is if you can't be first in a category, set up a new category that you can be in. So, for instance, some people think that because we're named PYRESWAP, we sound like another, like, vanilla Unifork, right? Does that make sense? And they have that early perception, right? And it's kind of important that while we do have swap in our name, we focus that we're not the first, we're not like another Me Too DEX. Rather, we are the first decentralized credit union, right? We are the first megadApp that allows you to monetize your wallet's transaction history. We are the first megadApp that allows you to build credit score by playing video games. We are the first, does that make sense? The first negative yield instrument in Web3, right? The first use of the word MEAD, which is now actually a great focus word for us. The first active staking project. Make sense? Right? So we distinguish ourselves with these other categories, and that's how we, in fact, continue to win. Making sense? Okay. The law of the mind, right? So it's better to be first in the mind than it is to be first in the marketplace. So believe it or not, the examples here they describe is how Apple computers, right? Apple computers were able to dominate the mind with their simplicity, right? Like if you want to make a big impression, you cannot worm your way into their mind and then slowly build up a favorable opinion. The mind doesn't work that way. You have to blast your way into the mind, right? So the reason you blast instead of worm is that people don't like to change their minds. Once they perceive you one way, that's it. They kind of file you away in their minds as a certain kind of person. You cannot become a different person in their minds. So one of the mysteries of marketing is the role of money. So blah, blah, blah. One day, a few dollars can work a major miracle. The next day, millions of dollars can't save a company from going under. When you have an open mind to work with, even a small amount of money can go a long way. Yep. And, the law of perception. Marketing is not a battle of products. It's a battle of perceptions. So, legitimately, like, people think that, like, over time, like, the best products win. And this involves that there's some sort of, like, objective reality, which there really isn't. Like, most people end up perceiving the world the way that they believe, and then they kind of, like, adjust how they tune reality to their, like, pre-existing bias, if that makes sense. So you're in the business of perceptions and not in the business of products. So, like, we in PYRESWAP, we brag about how great the products we've built, but, like, legitimately, if that's not clear to people in their minds, then like it's not true. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like that's just how the way it works. This is actually a really good chapter. But okay, 5 is the law of focus. The law of focus, it is the most powerful concept in marketing is owning a word in the prospect's mind. So like certain words that we've been doing this good with is megadap. In fact, I'll write some of these up. Mead, active staking, decentralized credit union, right? Hope you guys understand what I'm saying here. Megadap, Mead, active staking, decentralized credit union. I guess there's arguably some other words that would matter involving like terminal utility and stuff, but that might not really be that critical on the marketing side. Legitimately though, owning these words is kind of critical for people thinking of you in their mind as like what you have going on, if that makes sense. Hope that makes sense. There might be some other words that in theory, we could own in the future, but I think right now, these right here are like 4 strong ones for us, if that makes sense. The law of exclusivity, and this is actually based on the owning of words, is that like 2 companies cannot own the same word in the prospect's mind. That's all it means. So like legitimately, you want to like diverge away from the usage of that word. So, you know, we do use the word swap, but like we don't want people to even think about the idea of swapping here, which is kind of funny. Like it's like we only use a DEX for like the underlying mechanisms of it, not the yeah, you guys understand that. But legitimately, yeah, it's more about like differentiating yourself and being exclusive in what you actually do offer, and it gives you a bunch of status there. The law of the ladder involves like where you are with number 1, number 2, and number 3. I think that with dApps, we could arguably say that we're in a ladder of our own because we have categorized ourselves that way. But like generally speaking, this is talking about market share and like the way you differentiate being at number 1 or number 2 or number 3. It doesn't exactly apply to us so much, but there are ways that you can kind of brand yourself as an underdog. Does that make sense? Like, so wherever your position is on the ladder, that can be useful for your branding. And arguably, the fact that we're going to make our chart look like it's coming back from the dead, I think this helps with our branding because that's part of the story of the project as well. Does that make sense? Okay. The law of duality. Yeah, okay, this one talks about like how most brands like converge, but this is actually not that super useful to us. The law of opposite. So if you're shooting for second place, your strategy is determined by the leader. And what that means is you want to figure out how to differentiate what you have in order to make yourself the right underdog. Does that make sense? Like, so it talks a lot about Pepsi and Coke in this chapter. And basically it talks about how Pepsi, in order for Pepsi to get out of... Coca-Cola used to have 90% of the market, and then Pepsi would only have 10. In order for Pepsi to like creep up, they had to market to young people. So they got to like teenagers. Does that make sense? So they got teenagers to drink Pepsi, and then as those teenagers kept growing up, they kept drinking Pepsi. And now I think, what is it? Coca-Cola is like 55 and Pepsi is like 44 or something like that. Yeah, they're very close now in market share. The law of division. This one's great for us. This one's great because it says over time a category will divide and become 2 or more categories. Does that make sense? So like legitimately, what happened? Like what are we trying to do with that? we're in fact kind of championing this. Because staking, right, we're trying to decide there's a separation between passive and active, right? Now, arguably, there's already types of divisions within staking. You've got your liquid staking, your liquid restaking. You've got your illiquid staking. You've got your validation delegation staking. Does that make sense? So staking is already all over the place, kind of divided. I think proof of work as well. Like once it gets big enough, it divides into categories, if that makes sense. So we're in fact doing well here. We're doing well here because we're kind of like being on top of that. This is the law of perspective, and it says marketing effects take place over an extended period of time. So what that means is that anything that seems too explosive in marketing is not really an indication of anything. And what it means is that like you have to, yeah. Yeah, this one actually talks about couponing. Yeah, it says like you don't want a coupon because once you get in the business of couponing, you can never stop couponing. I think that there's a gaming platform called Steam, and Steam has a wish list function, and their entire business model is based around the wish list function, and then kind of like randomly making things go on sale. You guys aware of this? So like people always wait to buy things when they're on sale, and yeah, like that is like their business model. So it's like everyone's always kind of like waiting to buy something at a certain event. Like it just couponing becomes a drug, and I think Amazon kind of works the same way now with Prime Day. You know what I mean? Here is something. This is called the law of line extension, and here is something that I see Web3 do wrong all the fucking time. And line extension means product line extension. Generally speaking, product line extension is not exactly considered to be the right move in marketing. And in Web3, you'll see that like there will be a DApp, and then effectively when they think about like line extension, they just begin thinking about like, okay, do I need to copy what I see other people doing? And then all they end up doing is they divide like the customer and user base they already have like among more products, and then now their products continue to struggle like deeper and deeper. Does that make sense? Hope that makes sense. A lot of people have asked if we're gonna like, you know, there's other DeFi dApps that we could fork and then like put under PYRESWAP. The answer is like a lot of them we don't want to. Like we're not trying to necessarily like clone what other people do. Like we're trying to like do what we do and then go deeper in that direction. Like we already have a 6-phase roadmap, if you guys aren't aware, right? This 6-phase roadmap is actually pretty detailed. It's not like, I don't think I've seen roadmaps as detailed over phases, to be clear. I think that most of the time people are kind of like winging it as they go because they don't really know what to do. In Web3, I think that people look, they're like, okay, how can we end up doing more under the same brand? And it's like, it's because they don't really have their head wrapped around what they're doing in the first place. So they're still kind of dabbling. And this is also just like not exactly like the right move as far as marketing goes. Anyways, yeah, it starts off with a bunch of horror stories about line extension. We're not trying. Do you guys know that PYRESWAP, we're not even trying to compete with like the major dexes on the chains? Like we're not trying to really compete with Trader Joe or PancakeSwap or whatever's number one on Phantom right now. Like we're not trying to compete with that. We are in fact our own type of specialty dex, if that's not clear. Yeah, that's that's like we are in fact trying to categorize away from that. We're not trying to be a Walmart dex that doesn't specialize. We are trying to be differentiated, and you know I hope that's clear. It'll be clear soon enough though. I would love to talk about line extension for the longest time because now that word line extension is going to be in my vocabulary all over the place. So this is the law of sacrifice. This is a great one because there's 3 things to sacrifice. So there's three things. Okay. The first one is product line. The second one is target market. The third one is constant change. I want you guys to know something. We do an amazing job at this law. When we talk about product line, we have to talk about what we're not building. Does that make sense? Like legitimately, like we're not launching meme coin. Do you guys understand? We're not launching one. Like it's just not gonna happen. Like it doesn't make any sense to launch one. I know that other people do on this DEX. That's great. We're not gonna launch one. It's just not exactly. It doesn't help. It doesn't help. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help the project. Yeah. This is not like legitimately. We don't have like that type of people fucking like here, and they're gonna be disappointed in our brand if they start seeing that from this project. Does that make sense? Now, but what they might want to see are things like profitability and excitement, or like larger communities, or whatever meme coins tend to have. But like that doesn't mean that launching a meme coin is the key to making that happen. To be clear, so product line. Where is it written that the more you have to sell, the more you sell? And what that means is we're gonna focus on selling the unique stuff that we have. To be clear, we're gonna sell the unique stuff that we have. Okay. The full line is a luxury for a loser. It's described here. So legitimately, if you want to be successful, you have to reduce your product line, not expand it. Does that make sense? Like it says, like where do you sell, and then focus on selling more of what you're already good at. Does that make sense? Okay. The second one. Let me see where I can find the second law. Oh, target market. Okay. Okay, here's a great one. Okay. So, legitimately, let's discuss the second sacrifice. Okay. This one talks about Coca-Cola and Pepsi, actually. And then it says, in the late 50s, Coke outsold Pepsi 5-1. And then it said, what did Pepsi-Cola do to go against Coke's more powerful position? So, Pepsi developed a strategy based on the concept of sacrifice. So the company sacrificed everything except the teenage market, right? So then it brilliantly exploited this by hiring its icons, Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie, et cetera, et cetera. So within one generation, Pepsi closed the gap. So the fact of the matter is that like our product makes our target market smaller. Do you guys understand? Like legitimately, we are not going to be able to appease the largest dumbass group of Web3. Does that make sense? Like it doesn't work that way. Like our target market is smaller. So like we can't like doing another thing like increasing our product line to increase our product market. Both of these are mistakes. And on top of that, constant change is us changing a fad, us chasing a fad. So the fact of the matter is that we would not be able to, if we're just constantly changing, like that's also like, let me get to that. Yeah, the target is not the market. So they actually talk about how Marlboro used to sell ads where they would have both men and women smoking, right? And they figured that mostly men smoked, but we want to capture women as well. Legitimately, they literally cut women out of their marketing. They marketed only to men. In fact, they marketed to cowboys, which didn't even exist at this point. So legitimately, from being this super manly man, they marketed all to the Marlboros, and they're now the largest selling cigarette among men and women. Does that make sense? Like the target is not the market. So the target of Marlboro advertising is the cowboy, but the market is everybody. Yeah. Do you know how many cowboys are left in America? Very few, because they smoke Marlboros. This book's actually pretty funny. Anyways, and then the third one. Yeah. Finally, the third sacrifice, constant change. Where is it written that you have to change your strategy every year? So it says, if you try to follow the twists and the turns of the market, you're bound to wind up off the road. The best way to maintain a consistent position is to not change it in the first place. So this talks about two airlines. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And then again, White Castle, on the other hand, has never changed its position. A White Castle today not only looks the exact same as it did 60 years ago, it sells the exact same food, and it's only a little bit behind Burger King and McDonald's in revenues. Yeah. So legitimately, we do a great job of the law of sacrifice. Then, of course, this is the law of attributes. And legitimately, the way you can market here is by doing something opposite what the main competitors do, not similar. If you look like if you look too similar to the main winners, people will just pick with the winners. So first of all, I want to say, because I'm looking at our landing page, I just want to say like how our landing page does not look shit like anybody else's. Does that make sense? Would you agree, Mr. Producer? Yeah, like to this day, we're still not getting like diluted. I don't feel like that we are trying to look like everybody else, right? Like a Me Too. I think our landing page still looks great, and it really kind of it demonstrates like the uniqueness of what we have going on. And yeah, the our attributes and the way we market, so to speak, we're definitely trying to be Mavericks. Yeah, like that's the right way to go about it, because that's what people are going to react to. They're not going to react to like, oh hey, you're also in the same bucket with these other projects. Just whatever. I've been doing this right much to the chagrin and anguish of some of the people that say, why don't you go and do more of these things? And I'm like, well, actually, yeah, the right way to do is maintain this course. But something else cool is called the law of candor. And it means when you admit a negative, the process will give you a positive. So when you're actually very transparent and honest, people like that. So if you can talk about where you're weak, people will naturally respect your honesty and naturally focus on where you're strong. I hope that makes sense to you guys. So I think we've been doing that exceptionally right. Like in our marketing, if there's anything going for us, it's the degree of transparency we have. I don't think that other dApps offer this, or other chains. They don't. In my opinion, it's because they don't know what their job is. But they don't want anyone to realize they don't know what their job is. Yeah, that's all 15. This is the law of singularity, and it means that basically one strategy always tends to work one strategy always tends to work the best, but you have to figure out what strategy that is. That's more about a tactical thing. This one here is the law of unpredictability, and what this means is like you don't want to what it means is you want to position yourself for the present and the future, not just the future. Because if you get the future wrong, you're getting the present wrong. Does that make sense? So you do want to have long-term plans, but the thing is that marketing plans based on what will happen in the future are usually wrong. Because I mean, just over this last week, I've learned a lot about what I expected the future to be is wrong. And well, yeah, what this means is that this is the one that talks about fads and trends. This is actually, no, hang on, not yet, hang on. Okay, the law of success. Okay, and this one actually got to my head too. Success leads to arrogance, and arrogance leads to failure. So in order, ego is the enemy of successful marketing. My ego was the enemy of successful marketing. Objectivity is what's needed. I think that kind of, in a synopsis, describes what this chapter is about. Hilariously, this book was written in 1993. It actually talks a lot about Donald Trump in this chapter. It talks about, yeah, it's a true story. But yeah, anyways, this is also where it says, it's better to see once than to hear 100 times. It's better to see once than hear 100 times. Then it talks about the law of failure. This is also a good one. And it says, admitting a mistake and not doing anything about it is bad. But whenever you can figure out you're making a mistake and then pivot and change, like that's what leads you, like if you're able to do that faster, that's what leads to your success. I hope it makes sense to you guys. This one is called the law of hype. And the law of hype is great. The law of hype really applies to Web3. When IBM was successful, the company said very little. Now it throws a lot of press conferences. When things are going well, a company doesn't need the hype. When you need the hype, it usually means you're in trouble. Just being honest. I wish, if you remember anything from this PYRESWAP show, let it be that statement. When things are going well, you don't need the hype. If you need the hype, yeah. When things are going well, you don't need the hype. When you need the hype, it means you're in trouble. Does that make sense? I want you guys to think about that. Yeah. True story. Generally speaking, this law of hype, it can be helpful for getting new eyeballs, but like, if the hype, it's like when the hype dies down, the objectivity of your product will be revealed. And that will be kind of what determines it. Yeah, like that'll be what kind of what yeah, that'll be what the market remembers you at. Now, here at Law 21, this is great, the law of acceleration. And do you guys know what this one talks? Successful programs are not built on fads. They're built on trends. Does that make sense to you guys? They're not built on fads. They're built on, yeah. A fad is a wave in the ocean and a trend is the tide. Now, a fad gets a lot of hype and a trend gets very little. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Like a wave, a fad is very visible, but it goes up and down in a big hurry. Like the tide, its trend is almost invisible, but it's very powerful over the long term. So I want you guys to understand, PYRESWAP is definitely not a fad project. It's a trend project. Does that make sense to you guys? I think that a lot of people can get confused with hype and fads and think that's like where like Web3 is going, and it's not. Web3 is following a trend. It's not following a fad, to be clear. Like, yeah, the fads, they come and they go. I mean, do you guys remember other fads? For sure. Then it talks about a fashion, on the other hand, is a fad that repeats itself. Does that make sense? Like, so if a fad like goes up and then dies, and then it comes back like 3 cycles later, that is in theory a fashion. But regardless, yeah, it shows you these two waveforms, which I don't know if you can see. Let me see. I'll hold up to the camera. Yeah, the top one is a fad, and the second one is a trend, but you can't see the labels. Anyways, yeah, so the fad is a pump and dump. Do you guys see that? But a trend is a rally. Does that make sense to you guys? All right. That's the 21st law. The 22nd law is the law of resources. And all that means is that marketing takes resources. Don't I know it? Don't everybody know it? Anyways, do you guys have any questions? I think this was we can wrap it up here if there's no questions. I want to thank everybody on Thankful Thursday for showing up. And well, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, the religious ones. Yep, absolutely. Hardcore indeed. Hardcore indeed. Yep. Anyways, yeah. Enjoy the trend, you guys. Yeah, because PYRESWAP is not a fad. PYRESWAP is not a fad. Yeah, no, thank you, Seabiscuit. Thank you. Yeah, Seabiscuit. I hope you got a lot of value from this because, again, by the way, I wasn't wrong about at least half of them. That certainly was a good feeling. The ones that I needed to learn about were definitely big. Does that make sense? Like the ones that I needed to hear about were like, yeah. Like this, I have a whole other book, by the way, that I'm going to read probably over the weekend. It's a bit longer. And yeah, no, I knew that we were doing a bunch of stuff right. There's a bunch of granular stuff that I needed to think about as far as like making the first surface level checks happen. And then, by the way, you guys, we're now over 70. Okay, we now have 760 YouTubers out of the 800 target. So we're, by the way, we're 95% done with our YouTuber list. Yep. Yeah, PYRESWAP. Yeah, remember NFTs and shit? You remember right, ICOs? It's like there's always like some type of thing. Now, meme coins, in theory, they could be a fashion, right? Maybe only like every 8 years they show up again, right? Who knows, right? It could be in 2032, meme coins are back. Pepe 2, you guys. Pepe 2, Dogechain 2, Dogechain Junior, right? Rocket Doge Chain. Duh. Yeah, 2032, I can't wait. But yeah, no, the fad trend thing, for sure. So, you guys remember fidget spinners? We can bring it off Web3, right? Fidget spinners were a fucking fad, but then like, it's just not a trend. ADHD products could have been the trend. You know what I mean? And that could have been the thing to ride. But the fidget spinners themselves, I have a friend who was actually making fidget spinners back in 2017, like with 3D printers. I think one of the 3D printers we have in this house. And like he's not in the fidget spinner business anymore, because nobody is. Yeah, maybe there's like 5 guys on Temu that are still like just fucking pulling it. It's like, yep. Still got it. We got that hardcore central group of fidget spinner devotees. But yeah, like it's a fad, not a trend. I want you guys to understand, we can go look at CoinMarketCap. Indeed. We can look at CoinGecko today and see Lido staked ethers in the top 10. DeFi is not a fad. DeFi is a trend. Because DeFi projects, when they work, they don't die. Am I clear? Like DeFi is great because it doesn't die when it works. Amazing news on that, we fucking work. And the only job left now is for other people to understand that soon. We're working on it. Thank you guys for coming to the PYRESWAP show, and we will salute out here. See you guys next week on Monday. Probably have some good stuff happening over the weekend I might update you guys about. Bye.